Right. Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy Ask Us Anything live stream. This is episode number 19 with your host, Stephen Barr. It's me and Raul Subramaniam. How you doing, Raul?
Doing very well. How was your weekend?
Oh, really good. We drove out to the eastern part of the state and we did some stargazing because Jupiter was close by, and we had some friends with the telescope, and we saw Jupiter, we saw Saturn. The next day, they had a 99.9% light filter, so we can stare at the sun and see sunspots. It was really neat.
Awesome.
How about you? How's your weekend?
I have a telescope at home, but I don't think I've taken it out in over a year now. That's a good prompt to try that out this weekend. My weekend, let's see. Did a bunch of traveling. I've come into Bangalore. As you can see, my background looks different. And so did a short road trip over here, headed back to Chennai tomorrow. But yeah, different weather, definitely nicer. So yeah, fun trip.
Oh, Bangalore is nicer weather.
Yes, Bangalore is at an elevation of 4,000 feet.
Oh, okay, so you get the a little bit of a cool breeze.
Nice cool breeze, yeah, pretty much. Oh. And evenings it actually gets chilly. You don't need air conditioning or even fans for that matter. So it gets pretty nice.
Oh, cool. I'm really glad to hear that. That's the other thing. Oh, here's another thing. I'm doing this. Well, actually, it'll be after the stream today. This weekend, I found at Costco for sale a DJI Mini 2. I can't believe how tiny these things are. But after the live stream, I'm going to take the kids. We're going to try and fly this around somewhere.
Oh, phenomenal.
So, excited to try that out.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing some of the videos out of that setup.
Yeah, get some good B-roll footage for the live stream. Some good intro footage.
Yeah. And what does this do? This is 4K?
Yeah, this is 4K at 60 FPS. And I'm amazed. You have this plus the controller that takes your iPhone, came with a memory card for like $430. So
wow.
I think I'm amazed at how much it's gone down in price.
Yeah.
So looking forward to giving this a try.
Awesome. Okay.
Well,
we have a very packed schedule today. There's tons of very, very exciting stuff.
All right.
Take it away.
Absolutely. Let's jump into it. I will cue our transition and we'll jump into it. Here goes. Okay. So, like I said, the first one we're going to do is introduction and itinerary. And I wanted to give this a try where I actually put the name of the segment. I guess it blocks our names. Okay, so introduction and itinerary. So I wanted to show you what we're going to talk about today. And also, since it's behind the scenes, I'll just share my screen. Now, this is normally off to the side when I'm looking, but actually, so we see we've got episode 19, which is a stream. I'll see. Do you need me to zoom in a bit?
Yeah, let's zoom in a tad bit. Yep, I think that's good.
All right, so I've got episode 19, which is a live stream. And then I had some tasks that were ahead of time. I had create the banner. And I wanted to give a shout out to our really, really good graphic designer. She did, created the banner for the show. So that was in the advertising. We see that I asked her to do a little bit of a Back to the Future style banner. And then so that happened beforehand. We planned out a few segments. Some of those segments have these subtasks that had to get done beforehand. And then we remember from last time, because we've wired up, we have those transitions get generated and those URLs get populated here. So before the show, once I've got all the segments planned out in the right order, I click here. That'll give me a download of that little, the segment transition videos that you just saw. So this is our plan. And so, yeah, so usually I have this off to the side, but since it's behind the scenes, I wanted to talk about generating show notes, getting a transcript, and we're going to run AWS Comprehend on it. We're going to show a quick site dashboard based on some of the results of comprehend, and running Kendra on the transcript, and maybe other things that we can do in the future. Have another brainstorm. So, without further banter from me, let's switch over to the show note generator, step 2. Ready?
Let's go.
All right. So, show notes. I want to talk about what the show notes are, and also give a shout out to our really talented web developer, Alex. So I'll share this screen. Here we go. Oh, I see. Let me stop this screen, and I'll share. I wish that StreamYard could let you queue up multiple different screen sharing windows.
Yeah.
But anyway, here he goes. So at the end of the show, we put together some post-processing notes. And remember, in our What's New review segment, we've been giving, we can go over an article like high memory instances, SageMaker pipelines, local testing. And then I kind of summarize what Raul and I talk about. So again, this is episode 16. We talked about these huge, what were the name of these instances? The 112x large with the 12 terabytes of RAM.
I think these were the X2Es, or the new X2 instances.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, that's right. So this is what episode 16 looks like. We have our article, our summary of the discussion, our number of clouds out of 5, and our verdict. Remember, we talk about
simplify whether the announcement actually simplifies the message, or it just adds complexity, or the complexity alert that you see on the SageMaker pipelines local testing. I mean, that one still gets me. I still don't understand why they have local testing.
I really like the we could have added a lot of different variables to this, but I really like just the rating, and also does it simplify your life or does it complicate your life? So how do we get to this point from the show? So I'm going to go back to my ClickUp view for a second, and I'm going to show you what a completed show looks like. All right, give me a second here to swap screens. Share, I'll go back.
Stephen, you need the ultra wide. You really need the LG ultra wide.
Oh, possibly.
By the way, we were just talking about this before the show, about screen real estate needed.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, normally I'm not zoomed in this far, but all right, okay. Good, so here is, let's go back to episode 16, which we just saw. So here's episode 16, and we talk about our segment view. Here's the ratings that we give it. Here's the articles out of 5. Here's the URL. And I like this view, but of course not everyone uses the same tool, and I have to be aware of that. Our designer, Alex, he wants a Google Doc that he can then turn into this blog post. So the way we do that is we have an automation. So I'll show how this gets hooked up. In our stream automation here, we have a one of these is, here we go. When status changes from recorded to processed, then let's call the create show notes Lambda. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's basically, okay. When recorded to processed, then call the create show notes Lambda. And then what that does is it will, okay, so let's.
And this is a Lambda URL, right?
Yes, this is deployed.
This is a Lambda function.
Yeah. So let me go. I need to stop my share of this and share the browser. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's our Lambda function. And all it does is it gets that parent stream task, looks up all of the segments associated with it, looks up a certain field called description. It looks up the discrete fields of the rating and the number of stars. and then it will populate a Google Doc, which looks like this, with this table. So I can show how that works. I know Alex has already picked this one up, so I don't have to, I'm not breaking his workflow. Now, if I'm back in ClickUp now, and I'm going to switch this workflow from, I'll switch it to recorded, and then I'll switch it to, I think it's from ready to recorded. Here we go. And that should trigger the automation, and this should start populating in a second. Let me double check. I think it was. Yeah, ready to. It's recorded to process. So it's in recorded state, and then I need to advance it to post process. There we go. And this should start populating in a second.
I was going to say that we haven't made offerings to the demo gods.
Oh gosh, let's see if it does it. Oh, there we go. Oh, there it is. It's kind of cool seeing a Google document just kind of fill in. It's giving our URL, our ratings. There it is. So that was just based on that Lambda function trigger. And so I guess the takeaway from this automation is that one of the cool things, it's really nice to have one tool where everyone can visit. But you also have to work, you don't want to break other people's processes. And so by using automation, we can then say, okay, we need a Google, I have this structured way. Our web guy, he wants a Google Doc. All right, here we go. We can make it for him really easily. And it has this nice table. It's all powered by this one really simple Lambda function, which again, all it does is get the parent task, get all the segments, and then it runs this populate Google Doc on the parent task and the list of segments and the Google Doc ID, which is also built into the ClickUp task. So it looks like our demo gods, we have one favor with them. So that's how we do our show notes. And so it's really nice because again, earlier in the flow, I'd forget to do this step, and it's a lot of duplicate information. And so again, with that programming principle, don't repeat yourself.
Don't repeat yourself.
Yeah. Right. So I thought I'd rather not have to do this twice when I've already got all the data nicely structured. So that is how we create our show notes. All right.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, let's see. Should we go on to anything else to say about this one?
No, I think these days, there's one other aspect that I want to actually talk about, which is, as you can see, the more of these services or API that we use, it actually makes our lives so much easier. There are a lot of folks who still, try to do stuff on-prem, and there's just real benefit to having platforms like AWS and also like, Google's entire, we use Google Docs and stuff all the time. So it's really beneficial to have all of that. They have core API that are available to use and automate a whole lot of stuff that can make your life easy. So yeah, that's the big bet you really want to make.
Absolutely. It's really nice just having this big, even though from a programmer's perspective, it used to be fun to write the whole system yourself, but now thinking I really don't want to have to, I want to use other people's workflows, other people's code, and be able to just integrate it together in a really kind of cohesive way and focus on what my task is, which is, delivering this live stream, keeping it organized, making sure we can disseminate the information as efficiently as we can.
Yeah.
All right.
Completely agree.
Well, let's switch over to the next segment, which is going to be using Comprehend. All right, we'll take a quick break.
This is probably going to be one of my favorite parts of this show today.
All right, well, we'll take a 20-second break, and then we'll be back for Comprehend. Here comes.
Public cloud costs going up and your AWS bill growing without the right cost controls? CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by focusing on AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe with zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. The best part? With your approval, CloudFix finds and implements AWS fixes to help you run more efficiently. Visit cloudfix.com for a free savings assessment.
All right, we are back and we're talking about comprehend. So, Ro, what is comprehend? What's the use of it?
So think of comprehend as the machine learning based service that is that's all about natural language processing. So it's AWS's service that takes a bunch of text and it gives you a whole lot of different API calls that do different things. So if you want, for example, sentiment analysis, you give it a passage and you say, tell me what the sentiment is for either the passage or a sentence or whatever. Or you could ask it to find all the topics or entities that are being discussed in that particular passage. And that's really neat. So comprehend has a whole bunch of API that makes it really easy to comprehend programmatically what you're looking at from a text standpoint.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's comprehend really, really neat to be able to extract this structured data out of natural text. And actually, you did a really good demo on our AWS Made Easy Let's Code repository. I'm putting that in the chat right now. So this
and
is
how. I contrast that with what we used to do maybe 20 years ago, where NLP wasn't really a thing. We used to write a whole lot of regexes to figure out, certain kind of structure in the sentence or in the word, and English being what it is, or any other language. I mean, most of the languages as well. They aren't meant for structured programming language. I mean, that's why we create very structured programming languages to talk to computers. Natural spoken languages aren't very precise.
Yeah, it's not very structured.
Correct.
Well, I'll show you what we're using comprehend for. Okay, so I put the comprehend in the chat. So what we're using comprehend, and I think this is really, really neat. I'll share my ClickUp view first, and then I'll share the how it works. Let's see, here we go. Window and ClickUp. Okay, so in ClickUp, we're looking at all of our episodes, and we always talk about AWS. And one thing we want to know is what services did we talk about in a particular episode? And so we built this component using comprehend. So for example, in episode 11, we talked about QuickSight, TimeStream, Redshift, Dynamo, Neptune, which is a bit rare, Athena, Aurora, Kendra. So we talked about all these different services. So I wanted to show you how this list gets populated. So I'll switch gears to, again, this is all driven by automation. I'll show you this automation first before we switch over. Here, we're saying when we get a transcript, then we're going to call a Lambda webhook that runs comprehend. So let's show you that Lambda webhook. So I'm going to open up a DevSpace and share that screen with you. Right. Here we go. So this is in my live stream automation v2 repository, which I'll make public. What the cool thing about it, we mentioned this last week. This is, if you see here, it says generated from AWS Made Easy, SAM Lambda Pi Graviton. So we made a template repository that makes it really easy to just deploy a Lambda function to a URL. Now, in this case, I have my I'll show you my app.py, and it's running comprehend on. It's a really simple body. Okay, when we get the event coming in, the task, the ClickUp task in JSON is the payload. And so we want to run comprehend task on that task. Now, what does comprehend task do? Well, it gets the transcript, it gets the episode number, it runs detect entities, and then it looks for entities of type title or commercial item. And then it will populate this field in ClickUp with AWS services. So I can show you what it looks like when you're interacting with Comprehend. Give me a moment to get this set up. Let's see here. App.py. Load in all the function definitions, and then we should have a task. Okay, great. So we've got a task, and now let's run. We'll step into Comprehend task over here. All right. So
I think you forgot the function definition
oh,
in the copy. Yeah.
I should have gotten. Oh, no, I see what I need. I need to populate a variable. Give me 1 second to. This is one variable I don't want on the screen. It's just my my API key. Give me 1 second. Headers. Okay. 1 second here. Okay. Clear and back on. Okay. So just stepping through this code, it's getting the task, and then it's running. There we go. Let's look at the entities list. Entities list. Okay,
Yeah.
Here's found an organization called Lambda, a commercial item called S3 SageMaker, a title called EC2, an organization called Amazon, and so on. And so this here, this actually is probably not needed. We're just aggregating it to some, I want to get a count here. So we mentioned EC2 once, SageMaker once. And now what I do is to map it to ClickUp, I get a list of the custom fields. I already did that. 1 second.
Yeah. So, by the way, I almost forgot about the fact that you actually get categories for the stuff that you put in Comprehend, which is virtually impossible. So even if you did regexes, to identify words, or it's almost like the tokenizer that you built for a compiler. If you built a tokenizer that gave you all the words, just the exercise of going through and finding the category of a particular word, whether it's a name, whether it's a person, whether it's an entity, whether it's a title, it's just impossible to do it. And if you didn't have ML-based NLP, I mean, it would just be an absolute nightmare.
Completely agree. It makes this so much easier. All right, so what I've done is I've queried ClickUp for my AWS services field, and these are all the UUIDs of each of the choices that I have. And now I just map what I found to the field values there. And I create okay, so in this case, I found EC2 and that other one, S3 SageMaker. I look at the value list, S3 SageMaker. That there's still, it's still natural language processing. Sometimes it doesn't separate it perfectly. So it'll give me this one value that I can update. So I wanted to show you how this all ties together. So at the end of the episode, for example, here's a speech, Raul, that you gave recently at the AWS Anaheim Summit. We've got the transcript. Now I'm going to switch over to my ClickUp view. I'm going to ask the StreamYard people if there's a more efficient way to share multiple windows at a time. But here's my ClickUp view. Now here is your CloudFix talk that you gave. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to paste in the transcript. So we have automation that would populate this based on a webhook, but we'll do this manually. Here is the transcript. We will close that. And that's going to fire our automation. And we'll wait a second or two for that. Let's refresh ClickUp and see which AWS services you mentioned in your talk. Okay, there we go.
this one.
You talked about CloudFront, SageMaker, Redshift, Dynamo, Athena, Aurora, EC2, EBS, EFS, and S3.
That makes sense. Yep, those are all the things that I spoke about.
Awesome. And then so now,
it's so neat.
It's really cool just to think about what are we actually talking about. We can do other analytics on this. If we wanted to then filter and say, well, AWS services, what are all of the times that we talked about, well, I don't know, Redshift? Okay, and then it goes back here. It says we talked about Redshift in episode 11 and episode 12 and in Raul's Cloud Fix Anaheim talk.
Yeah.
So
something like that, looking through video conversations in an organized manner like this would have been virtually impossible just a couple of years ago. It's amazing that we're able to do that now.
And we can look at it. So the other thing that we want to look at, thinking about the future, is we can also make a custom entity recognition model. So, for example, when we talk about certain products that we like that aren't S3, for example, we talk about dev flows, about DevSpaces, we could make a custom entity recognition model that's looking for those, and then we could look at when do we mention those, when do we talk about other companies, other people. People gets tagged as its own entity. So we can run custom entity recognition models using the same template and then having them mapped to a fixed set of tags. It makes it really easy to stay organized. I think that's really the name of the game. Right. When we were 5 or 6 episodes in, it's really easy to remember what we did for each episode. But now this is episode 19. It is easy to forget when we talked about a particular topic. And so by being able to stay organized in this way, it's been really helpful.
Correct. And between this, a bunch of other podcasts and all the other content stuff that we've been working on, it absolutely, it gets so confusing about where we spoke about a particular topic or, where to point when somebody comes back to us with a question and says, hey, do you have an opinion on X, Y, or Z? It's really hard to go recollect, or it's really very hard to point them to that particular video or that particular episode. I remember, the first 1 or 2 episodes were great. It was really easy. We covered a bunch of topics. And now if I want to figure out, hey, we talked about that announcement about custom. In fact, why don't we do this? There was an announcement about SageMaker entities, SageMaker custom entities. We talked about that in one of the episodes.
So let's see.
You might have to share the screen again.
Yep, I'll put this on here. Oops, add to stream. There we go. So I'll go to AWS Services and look at SageMaker.
Yeah.
Here's the times that we've talked about SageMaker. Let's see, we talked about it in episode 2, episode 7, the What's New review. And we talked about it in 10 and 16. Well,
I think it's in the What's New review. I think it was episode 16, the What's New review, where we talked about custom entities that you could build into SageMaker models.
Well, let's have a look at 16 and see which segments we covered. Okay, so it's here we go. We talked. Oh, that was the SageMaker pipelines.
No, that is not it. So then it was the other one. It was episode. What is it again?
Let me add this filter.
By the way, can you imagine doing this without having all these tags and these entities already filled in? And I think we're going to talk about an easier way to figure this out, right?
Yes. I think this is actually a really good, what do you call this? This is a really good preview. Because even this is good for tagging, and eventually I want to tag the individual segments. Okay, here we go. Segment SageMaker autopilot experiments are now 10x faster.
No, it's the next one. They're announcing heterogeneous cluster for model training.
Yeah.
I think it's spoken about custom entities during that episode.
And then we can look at we've got the article URL. This was with Badri. So it's pretty neat. We have all that mapped. Now, some of this automation we've developed as we've gone along. So I'm still kind of backfilling all of the processes. Oh, and also just one thing I also wanted to share, I guess as part of this little sub segment, the data model that we've come up with to kind of manage all this. So we're talking about segments and highlights as if they're very distinct things. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So I think this makes sense in terms of how I think about it. So when we're planning, we've got segments that we want to talk about, right? We'll say, okay, first we're going to talk about our show notes generator. Then we're going to talk about we're going to talk about comprehend, and we're going to talk about QuickSight, and we're going to talk about Kendra. So we have this linear progression of segments that we've thought through. Now we don't know how long we're going to take. Sometimes you can talk a long time or a short time. So then when we actually record it, we run those transitions that, again, we talked about last time, but we generate to put a few of these frames in here that we can key on. And then we talked about in the last episode, segment AWS, this is Rekognition segment detector API, is going to tell us exactly when that happens. And then so we run that automation against our video, we get these numbers, and that helps us generate what we call highlights. So highlights, we have one highlight per segment, but we can also have more. For example, if we just have a short little quote that we wanted to talk about. So a highlight, it's at least a 1-to-1 with the segments, but sometimes there's more. And then when we post the highlights, depending on where they're posted, so these get posted to LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Twitch channel. And then when we make a social media post, we'll post the highlight plus some commentary in the social media post. But the tricky thing is on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch, you're not really limited. But on Twitter, you're limited to a 90-second clip. So we take the highlight and generate what we call a preview highlight, which is at most 90 seconds. And then it says, we have this little 3-second video that we tack on to the end that says, for the full video, see the link in the tweet. And that way we can use Twitter Live, but stay under that 90-second threshold. And so that's our flow. And so this whole process is managing this from our free form recording here, plus the segments, all the way into this very structured view. And then I think in the in a future episode, we can show how we actually gather this all back in terms of a big picture view of how the social is doing.
Right.
Cool. So that's our data model. And so we're talking about segments to highlights to social posts. That's what we're doing.
Excellent. So we leave that problem that we just spoke about where we wanted to search for some context or some content in an episode that we did in the past, and how we use a different AWS service to achieve that. So,
all right.
Okay, so which is the next service that we're talking about?
Well, let's jump out of order here and let's go to Kendra. Here it goes. Okay, so Kendra is super cool. So here's the flow we want to talk about with Kendra. Let me put this up on the screen. So you saw here, we have our transcript as a field in ClickUp. We have,
there we go.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. We saw we have our transcript as a field in ClickUp. Now, when we also set that transcript, we also have a Lambda function that's going to take that transcript and it's going to write it out as a text file and put it into an S3 bucket. Oh, not a video bucket. Again, it's behind the scenes, just an S3 bucket. Now, this bucket is configured to talk to Kendra, and Kendra's watching it, and then we can query it. So let's look at it from the AWS perspective. Here is our Kendra setup. I probably should zoom in here. So we have, I'll have to regenerate some of this later. Anyway, we have an index, we have a data source, and now let's have a look at how we can interact with it. So I'm starting
just some
up.
background while this thing is coming up. A quick background. So before Kendra existed, a simple way to think about Kendra is like is Google search for your data. Though we're talking about Amazon here, so it's a little confusing that way. But think of what you experience when you type some text in the search input field. You just expect to magically get answers. If you had to do that behind the scenes yourself, what you would typically do is put together something like Elasticsearch, and then you would figure out just together a bunch of NLP tools that would give you all of these entities that you would index on. And then you'd basically take all of that data, put together a pipeline that ingests all this data into Elasticsearch. And then you would query Elasticsearch and then present it out, right? And then you'd have to do a bunch of tweaking to figure out what relevance means and what is appropriate in certain contexts. And then you'd build layers of, rule-based systems that handles all of this stuff. And then hopefully get good search results at the end of it. In our experience, dealing with a lot of CRM solutions and internet wiki solutions and stuff within our portfolio, that self-built stuff was an unmitigated disaster. So when Kendra came along, we got so excited for what it does. So, Stephen, you want to show everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Here goes. And again, I remember at one point I worked at an email hosting startup, and I remember building my first search engine literally as a wrapper around grep. So you had a CGI bin script, which was taking some input, calling grep on the file system under the hood, parsing the results back, and then using old CGI, if you remember that, and posting it back. And it worked kind of well. I remember at some point thinking, like, I understood the Perl regular expression engine well enough to think, I know how I can crash this. And I searched for a sequence of characters, and sure enough. And that's the thing that you'll always be dealing with that.
Right.
Even now, 25 years later, you'll still be dealing with random issues that come up if you try and roll your own. Okay, so here's Kendra. So again, just showing how it worked. I think I should that. Yeah. So we have our episodes go into an S3 bucket. Kendra indexes it, and then we can query it. So here's a DevSpace that has Kendra script in it. And I'll show you how we can interact with it. So let's say Python 3 Kendra.py. Now, a few episodes ago, I told a story about how my Australian wife went into a store and she ordered hot chips, and they microwaved a bag of potato chips and handed it to her. And I don't know if they were just joking with her or what they were doing, but it was a funny anecdote. And I don't remember exactly what episode it was. So say if we look for French fries, hot chips into Kendra. Okay, now it gives us the answer. Oh, our first one is an answer. It says in the episode 12 episode, and then here's the little sentence that we use. I guess I was talking at this point, telling it in our opening banter, telling that funny story. Oh, there's episode 12. So that's our answer. Now, let's see, what other things we have? Oh, well, here, document 3. So then the score starts dropping. We're talking about hot, it being hot. So it's not matching the chips part, but it's matching hot. And then later we talked about Raoul's plants in episode 10 being hot, but we used the word 44 degrees centigrade and hot. So then you see the search kind of goes down. What about a time we talked about stored procedures? Let's do stored procedures.
Was this the episode we talked about bad practices?
Well, we have a couple of times, but they're always, let's see. So the most one here.
Top.
Here we go. Episode 15, 1,400 stored procedures. Just a mountain of
I remember that example.
Yeah. Here's episode 11. We look at sediment buildup under these rocks. That's obviously stored procedures calling stored procedures. Here we go. Episode 12, SQL, where it's both a strength and a weakness, is that you can do something complicated. So again, episode 7, we talked about stored procedures. I don't think we ever talk about them in a great way.
So the big insight that comes from Kendra is that I have a pet peeve for about SQL stored procedures.
Let's see when we talk about SageMaker. This is cool. Okay, SageMaker episode 7, SageMaker Data Wrangler, SageMaker Canvas. We talked about it in episode 16, SageMaker Cloud. Why would they do this? Still, again, we found that one. So it's really neat. We can now search our documents intelligently. I think when we have a few more episodes under our belt, we'll be able to use the SageMaker querying, which will be kind of fun.
Yeah. And just imagine if you had any kind of document store and you want an NLP-based search. It's really simple to put this together with Kendra and make it available as, a searchable index. And you can ask natural language-based questions out of it. So instead of actually providing words, why don't you try this? And I don't know if this does it. With whether your script passes it as is.
Okay.
But why don't we search for when did I ask for hot chips? Or when did we talk about hot chips? What is the first one that came up?
That's episode 12, document.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you can actually ask natural language-based questions of Kendra, and it understands it. You don't have to do the Elasticsearch type. Hey, here are the only words or tags. You can ask natural language-based questions of Kendra.
Let's look at this one. Graviton. 14, 13, 13, 12, 11, 18, 4, 15. We like the Graviton. And we can, we should run sentiment analysis on all of our different topics. On the text near, and then that would be a funny table to generate. I'll work on that for next time. So I'll run all of the different AWS services, run a Kendra search on all of them, and then report our sentiment. Because I think that would be really okay. And so we got a comment from a viewer. Really happy about this one. Well, I just joined. So a raw idea of AWS from end user perspective. Curious about all this to see the magic happening. All right, thank you. I hope you do check out the full episode and let us know if you have any questions or ideas for a future one. And I think this summarizes the recognition of Kendra. It's just, that's how we feel about it too. Kendra is super cool. And this is stuff that, it's only a few lines of Python and mostly, moving data around. The magic is really just pointing it to an S3 bucket full of text and asking it questions.
Correct. Okay.
All right. Well, anything else we have to say
about? No, try it out. Try it out on anything that has, wherever you have tons of text. This is the holy grail of searching through loads and loads of text. Oh, one other thing that, just a general pattern that we've seen that I found very useful is to take any kind of, content you have. It could be audio, video, text. The standard pipeline that we apply almost everywhere is first, just as a general practice, translate that to English, because that can be a common way in which you can process all the data and index it and search it and do all of that stuff. So what we typically do is do the translation step. And then once we do translation, then we for video and audio, we transcribe and then do the translation. And then once you have the translated text all in English, then you can run through the regular pipeline of comprehend for tagging, entity recognition, stuff like that. You can then run through all of just index it into Kendra and make it fully searchable. One of the big projects that's currently underway within our org is we are taking all of our meetings from forever that we've had in the likes of Zoom and Chime, and we're just indexing it all so that we can search through it and actually figure out. There's just so much tribal knowledge that's stuck in these videos and meeting recordings that if only we could unleash that value and go refer to it and say, hey, I was talking to Stephen in some meeting from I don't know when, and we were talking about SageMaker. What meeting was that? To be able to ask that question and get it answered is incredibly valuable as an organization.
What I really like, in addition to everything you just said, just thinking back to the promises of the semantic web projects, right, where they wanted to add all this structure, and that was a real. If you dig back through some of that stuff and all the stuff that got invented, it was really interesting to see. Okay, how much if you have to do this manually? When are you talking about a person? When are you talking about a place? When are you talking about a quantity? And in order to actually write semantic compliant documents, how cumbersome it is, and you have to learn about RDF triples and all this stuff to really be able to add the structure to your document. But now you can just say, get it into a text file. If it's an audio, that's no problem. You can get audio or video to text pretty quickly. And then now that it's just in plain old English or whatever language, you can add structure to it automatically and be able to say, here's the persons, here's the places, here's the things, here's custom entities that we have trained our model on to look for, and add all of that structure in after the fact.
Correct.
It's really, really exciting. And like you said, because you've stored all those meetings, you can then run it retrospectively and add all this richness. It's not just, going forward. You can, through one big batch job, push all your meetings through. It's really cool.
Exactly. I'm just going to add 2 more services just for the audience to keep in mind to look into. The first one is Rekognition. So just like Comprehend is to NLP or the natural language processing stuff, or to text in general, Rekognition does the same stuff, but for video. So if you wanted to search for videos where where there might be a banner that says something, some text in it, or you might we use Rekognition for identifying segments, and we just discussed that in the last episode. There are a bunch of different things that Rekognition can actually search for and find for you. And so take a look at that. And the last recommendation that I have in this suite of AWS services is Textract. So let's say you have a PDF document or a bill or things like that, and you actually want structured text. Now, it's easy for our programs to look at JSON and deal with it. But if you give it a PDF document, which has, a bill where it has a title, it has a table in there with a bunch of data and stuff like that, it's really hard for machines to parse it. You can hope that it's all going to be structured, but things never are. So there is a lot of very neat technology that goes into Textract to give you all of that data in JSON form. And JSON is very easily readable and very easy to process. So when you have documents in that format and that structure, just forms are a perfect example. When you have online forms, or actually not even online forms, if you have physical forms that people have to write into and submit, then using something like Textract to actually get a digital version of that with a full JSON, JSON evaluation of your form is incredibly valuable.
I used Textract at a consulting product a few years ago where these people were working with a supplier that were very old-fashioned, and there was no ERP or any kind of accounting software. They just sent a PDF with item number, order date, whatever, and we can set up a really system where the guy who was receiving these orders, whenever they sent him the invoice, he could just forward it to an email address that was dedicated to Textract, and Textract would take it from there. And we didn't have to, because before that, he was literally opening up this PDF, opening up his Xero accounting software, and just moving the data around. And with Textract, it made it so much easier to get all these different structure out of this data, because it was really neat data, but they would only give us PDFs, the vendor. Yeah. So Textract's a great way to go.
Here's another very, very interesting use case, and it's in our setup. So whenever we acquire companies, invariably you also get all the other vendor contracts and all of your other, relationships that are all legal contracts, or even customer contracts. You get them all as big PDFs. Now to take that and put that into your CRM system, or to put it into your financial system, or to understand what the risks or liabilities are, the due diligence that you need to perform on those, it becomes so much easier with TextRite, because you're literally looking for a section called liabilities, or you're looking for a section for SLAs, or you're looking for a particular section in the text, and you know what you're looking for, and whether it's a table or whether it's a it's in the appendix, you basically have these tables of a bunch of very important data that you want to capture. TextRite does that for you and gives it to you in JSON form, and then you can process it any way you want.
Oh, I wonder how Kendra would do with legal questions.
Apparently pretty decently. There is a separate set of entities you may have to train it on, but legal is one of the big, legal and insurance, I heard from the Kendra team, are some very interesting and exciting use cases for them.
Well, I'll reach out to someone on the Kendra team, because I think we have enough questions that it would be good to have a full interview. So I'll reach out to someone on the Kendra team. Let's make that happen in the next couple of weeks. That would be really fun.
Sounds great.
Well, should we do our last segment?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. We're going to show you QuickSight. All right. So I'm going to share my browser again. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So QuickSight. Now looking at the QuickSight dashboard, I'll just show you an example. So we're taking our transcripts and then running comprehend on them, getting the tags. Another thing I did was just dump the text files into an S3 bucket. And here is what our QuickSight dashboard looks like. I did a word count because the numerical quantities, that's a bit more proprietary. But the word count here, let's see if we can do this. So let's look at a word count by episode. Let's go to episode, an older one. Let's go to episode. Well, actually, let's go to 12. See what we talked about, episode 12. Interesting. Yeah. Wicker Pro. We still have to follow up on Wicker and see how that's going. Episode 13. So these are what I've done here is I've made a size weighted dashboard on the different entities that we found in the transcripts and then parameterized it by the episode number. So if you're a Tableau user, this would feel very familiar. QuickSight. Now, Raul, what are some of the uses of QuickSight that we use?
So we have basically replaced most of our analytics platform with a pattern that I call storage, query, and dashboard. So QuickSight does the dashboarding part of it. So let me start with storage. There are two kinds. We pick one of two. So depending on what the latency requirements on analytics are, we either pick S3, which is our default, or if there's a requirement to have, responses back in a sub 500 to 600 millisecond time frame, then we switch all that stuff over to Redshift. So that's your data source. So you choose between either S3 or Redshift. Then the second part of it is to be able to write queries or views on this data, right? And just like you would have with any other SQL data source. And for that, we use Athena. And Athena gives us a bunch of data sets that are processed. So sometimes we have to do a bunch of joins, we have to do a bunch of processing on the data and get it into a view in SQL terms. And that's basically what we get with Athena. And once we have that view, we load it into QuickSight. That then allows us to slice and dice the data any way we want. And that's become the standard pattern for all of our BI and analytics.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Having been around, seeing people in the Tableau world, right? This can get you so. I mean, this is very, very much in the same realm. It's really easy. I mean, I hadn't used it very much before, but it only took me a few minutes of experimenting to literally all you do. You make a data set here. You can point it at an S3 bucket, or you can, let's see.
You can point it to an Athena query as well.
Here we go. New data set.
Correct.
Let's make this a bit bigger here. Yes, you have lots of different choices about where you point this.
Yeah.
Where you want to analyze. I want to try the Twitter analysis at some point. Point it to an S3 bucket, Athena, MySQL. We do all of that, and then literally just make a dashboard. You can drag and drop different dimensions, look at different types of visualizations. And I think it's a really fun way of just, again, quantifying, understanding what we're talking about. I'm going to make a dashboard we can use to understand, once I'm pulling together all the different social data, to understand which of our highlights are more impactful, to understand how all of that works. But it's really exciting that we have this to visualize, and we don't have to think about building this out ourselves, right? It's not having to deal with plotting engines and all of the, behind the scenes of all of this is some really nitty gritty code about joining and dealing with date formatting and all of this stuff. We can just focus on the data that we actually want to display.
Correct. And the best part about QuickSight, or the part that I love the most about QuickSight, is that you can literally embed an entire QuickSight dashboard into into any application. So for most of our applications, we literally just do all of our work in QuickSight, get all the dashboards that we want ready, export that as a view, and then that can literally be embedded into any of our enterprise products or applications in a neat layout, where we might have a menu on the side or on the top, and then the dashboard just shows up in the middle, and we can talk to it, we can pass it, we can theme it, we can customize it. There's so much you can do with it when it's embedded in an application. It's pretty neat. So there was so much work that was being done in building custom dashboards in the past with all of our enterprise products. We just stopped it all. We're like, everything has to be replaced with QuickSight dashboards, because you can then build the dashboard separately, embed it, and it just works.
Oh, it's so much better than trying to. I still remember, again, the custom dashboards that I wrote where I'm trying to script R to process a CSV file, dump a PNG somewhere, and then pull it back in, and it becomes so fragile. With having this very rock solid dashboarding solution that's integrated with all of your other data sources, really neat. Well, we have about a minute or two left. I wanted to see if we wanted to brainstorm for future automations or talk about any of those things. Let's just do a quick transition. So what do you think? What does the future hold for automation for us and in general?
I think one of the things that I've always wanted to do is on AWS-madeeasy.com, I want to embed the the Kendra search bar, so that folks can literally query for anything, any content that we put out, without having to worry about tags and without having to worry about how specific episodes. They should just say, "Tell me everything you know about SageMaker," or "Tell me bring up all the videos talking about instance type X2E with 128 terabytes of RAM," or how much ever that was.
112. That's
112
for those big SAP HANA instances. Actually,
Correct.
So, and I like that idea we came up with earlier, is take every service, run it through Kendra, take the blob of text that comes out, run that through, I guess it would be Comprehend to get the sentiment.
Yep.
And then just have a little table.
Yeah, it's interesting. So are you talking about the blog post announcements and run?
No, I want to be able to search the transcripts for each
the transcript,
topic.
absolutely.
And then,
Absolutely.
but then once we have the little snippet of the service that we're talking about, to get the sentiment of the text surrounding that snippet. So say, okay, every time we talk about stored procedures, sentiment negative. Every time we talk about, let's see, what's a good, if we talk about Lambda function URLs, that's positive. And then maybe there'll be some that are mixed. And I would love to see the distributions of each of those.
Yeah. One piece of warning on that. Comprehend does not do well with sarcasm.
Oh, we might be in trouble.
We've not been able to make Comprehend understand sarcasm yet, but it does a pretty decent job, in all other cases.
All right, we'll have to see. Sarcasm's hard enough for some people, so can't blame Comprehend. All right, well, this has been a really fun show, and hopefully it was useful to the audience of automating your own live streams. There'll be a blog post out by the end of the week that will have some templated repositories that you can go play with, whether it's Kendra, whether it's Comprehend. And again, I hope this is useful to you, and please let us know if you have any questions, and we'll see you not next week, but the week after. Yep.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Stephen, for walking us through all of your automations.
All right. My pleasure. All right. Fun. Have a good one.
Bye.
Is your AWS public cloud bill growing? While most solutions focus on visibility, CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by finding and implementing AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe. There's zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. We've helped organizations save millions of dollars across tens of thousands of AWS instances. Interested in seeing how much money you can save? Visit cloudfix.com to schedule a free assessment and see your yearly